Greetings everyone. In this video I'm going to be talking about models of representation. I'm not in my normal classroom, so I'm not using my normal recording software, so I might sound a little different, look a little bit different, and it keeps trying to cut my ears off. So I'll just have to be a fairly earless teacher for this one. And this video I want to talk about, it's on the other side. In this video I would like to talk about models of representation. Which is all to do with backbench MPs and how they act and how they might kind of represent us. Let's explain that term a little bit more so it kind of makes sense. You know exactly what this video is about and how you could then use it in an essay. Let's just read the blue box above my head. The UK is a representative democracy. This means that we elect MPs to make decisions on our behalf. The alternative would be an impractical system of endless referendums or similar, where the public makes all the choices. So think about this. In theory, in a democracy, the people have the power, the people make the choices. So in theory, that would mean that the people literally make the choices, like what should we do with Brexit? There's an obvious one. What should we do with Scottish independence? But also, should we raise taxes? What should we do with the schools? What should we do with this obscure fishing bill that's coming through? What should we do with this traffic adjustment that we're coming through? Because if you look at the Parliament website, there are literally 40, 50, 60 bills going through Parliament at any one time. If you go to the US system, there's like thousands of bills going through the legislature all at one time. So in theory, democracy should mean that the public vote on every single bill, but realistically, that's never going to happen. That's impossible. How would you get everyone to vote, even just logistically? And even if you could get everyone to vote, I don't know anything about fishing. You probably don't know very much about fishing. I wouldn't be informed. And also, people often vote purely in their own interest. Do I want a tax rise? No. Do I want better education? Yes. Do I want better NHS? Yes. Those three things don't work together. If I want a better NHS, I'm also going to have a tax rise. So it's just not a practical system, a way of doing it. So what we call direct democracy, which is where people directly vote for what they want, it just doesn't really work. And we'll talk about that more when we actually kind of get to talking about different types of democracy in the second half of the course. So instead, what the UK has is something called representative democracy, where I pick someone, I vote for someone who will go and make decisions on my behalf in Parliament. And the word representative democracy is there because I vote for a representative. And so everyone that lives where I live, we all come together and we all vote, and whichever representative gets the most votes, that becomes the representative for my constituency where I live and for your constituency where you live. So a representative democracy refers to the individual who has become the representative for those particular people. Now, let's look at this blue box over there. Sorry, my camera is mirrored the other way, so I'm pointing in the wrong direction all the time. That box. When our representatives cast their votes in Parliament, how do they decide which way to vote? Because there's going to be votes all the time on bills, there's going to be things to say in debates. And how do they know whether to vote yes or whether to vote no? What goes through their mind? How do they make their decision? Because there'll always be things pulling them in different directions. So this lesson, we will be looking at a few different models, i.e. ways that representatives can make these decisions. If you don't understand what I mean yet, you will do by the time I finish the different kind of variations. So these guys here, these are our beautiful model MPs, obviously not quite as model-tastic as these two here. I found those two and I was like, yes, you are model MPs. But we're not talking about models in that context. We're talking about models as in different ways, different theories, different ideas. That's what the word model means in this context, ideas and theories. So here is model number one. It's called the mandate or the party model. I prefer the term party model. Some of the textbooks and Wikipedia use the term mandate model. But this argues this. It argues that MPs are not independent. When we vote for them, they cannot just go off and do their own thing. They cannot make their own decisions. They cannot use their own ideas because they have been elected due to their party. We voted for them because they were Conservative or because they were Labour or because they were Green. And therefore they are there to represent their party as well as the constituents. Therefore, MPs should follow the party line. And so you know about the whip system already. And so MPs should morally and ethically and practically obey the whips because they were elected due to their party. And so if their party is saying vote this, then they should also vote this. And on top of that, MPs should support the manifesto promises. So you see Boris Johnson there with his recent manifesto saying get Brexit done. In there's probably 100 or so promises. And if I was the local representative for Watford, let's say I was a Conservative MP, I've probably been voted in not because I'm Mr. Cox, but because I was the Conservative representative, and therefore I should support the manifesto, I should support my party, I should support the Prime Minister. And so when I come to making my vote in Parliament, I should always be thinking, what does my party want me to do? That is the party model, the mandate model. Now, what do you think so far? Do you think this is right? Do you think MPs should vote along with their parties? Do you think MPs are elected because of their party connections and their affiliations? Do you think they should always support the manifesto? What about something that the party wants to do that wasn't in the manifesto? Does that change something? So, for example, all the corona decisions that Boris has made wasn't in the manifesto. By the way, if you're not sure, a manifesto is a document that parties put together before elections, and in it, it says, if you elect me, then we will do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or whatever it might be. So that's what a manifesto is. It's like election promises, okay? So that's model number one. Model number two, the delegate model. This is almost the complete opposite. This argues that an MP should convey the views of others. A delegate is someone that is sent from somewhere to represent someone else. So like, you know, when you guys do group work and then the teacher says something like, okay, could one person in the group summarize what everyone else in the group thought? That person is then being a delegate. It's one person who is there not to necessarily represent themselves, but to represent the other people from where they came from. This model argues that MPs should ignore their own views and ignore their party's views, and instead MPs should be purely the mouthpiece of their constituency. So I, at the moment, live in Watford. So that would argue that basically my MP, whenever they're making a vote, should always think, well, what does Watford want? What is in Watford's best interest? Will this bill help Watford or harm Watford? Will this bill, do the people in Watford want this bill, or do the people in Watford not want this bill? So this ignores the party. This is purely down to where were you voted in? Where are you the representative of? And all of your decisions should be taken on the basis of that belief or choice. It's kind of how the system's supposed to work, really. You know, when Parliament was set up all those many years ago with I've forgotten his name, Simon de Montfort, I think it was. The idea is that everyone came from a different area of the country. That's why we have this constituents idea, and every person was there to bring the opinions of that area of the country. This is like the kind of the purest version of representative democracy. But think about this. Look at the last bubble. Is this really possible? So, because many bills won't directly affect Watford or Gerrards Cross or London directly. You know, the bill might be kind of independent of a specific area, in which case, do you vote for it or against it? Also, what if your constituency is divided? I'll use Watford again. Watford was basically split down the middle on Brexit. We were about 51-49. So it was quite a good representative of the country as a whole. So does the MP go, well, it's 51-49, so I'm going with the 51? Or do they go, well, actually my constituency is divided, so I should be divided too? Or my constituency is undecided, so I have to be undecided too? Do you see the kind of the issue there? The third issue is, how do you know what your constituency actually wants? I mean, sure, the MP can open the window, look out, and they can see a protest of, say, 200 people campaigning for more money in the NHS. So there's 200 people out the window, but there's 74,000 other people that aren't campaigning out the window. So can I just take those 200 people in a protest and say, well, that's what my constituency thinks? Do I have to do a survey and a poll on every single issue? Do I need to kind of walk around on the street going, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? I mean, none of these things are actually kind of possible or practical, really, are they? So think about this. MPs, most of the time, won't really know what their constituencies think, with some exceptions. MPs sometimes have to make decisions that don't directly affect their constituency. So what do they do then? And also, sometimes what their constituency wants might not always be the best thing for their constituency. So if to use my example from earlier, if all of the constituents want lower taxes, but at the same time the constituency really needs a new hospital, it's tricky to be a delegate in that kind of situation. So there's various kind of issues there, but that's the delegate model. Our third and final model is known as the Trustee or Burkean model. I'll probably use the term trustee more than the other. The reason it's often known as the Burkean model is because this was suggested by a man called Edmund Burke, and so they used his surname to call this the Burkean model. How does this one work? Well, this one says that a representative has been voted in, and therefore that representative should use their own knowledge, their own experience, and their own judgment. So they shouldn't be going, what does my party think? They shouldn't be going, what does my constituency think? They should be thinking, what do I think? Because ultimately, where's the thing? Constituents vote for a person, not a party. Now, I've got a ballot there. It's not actually the ones we use in the UK, but it makes the point. When you go and vote, it's sure, it says Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, Green, but the first thing it says is the name of the person that you are voting for. In our country, we don't vote for the Conservative Party. We vote for Bill, who happens to be a member of the Conservative Party, or whatever. But the point is the constituents vote for the person, and therefore that person should use their knowledge, experience, and judgment, says the Trustee Model. Edmund Burke said, in the quote there, he argues, he's not a member of Bristol, talking about an MP. He is not a member of Bristol, but a member of Parliament. And what he means by that is he was elected by Bristol, sure, but he's not there to represent Bristol, to be a member from Bristol. He's there to be a member of Parliament. And in Parliament, he has to listen to the arguments, weigh it all up, use his knowledge, experience, and judgment, and then vote according to what he or she believes is the best route to take. But check out Homer on the other side. Do people really vote for a person and not a party? Like when you go and vote, will you be thinking, oh, I like Bill? Or will you be thinking, I like the Conservatives, I like Labour, I like Lib Dems? What would happen if all the MPs all went down their own kind of viewpoints and ignored the kind of party system? What if the MP wants one thing, but the constituents want something else? This happened with the Brexit debate. Sometimes you had a Remainer MP who lived in a kind of a Brexiteer area, and that caused a clash between the MP and the constituents. It's tricky, but there's no easy answers. So what actually happens in the UK? What do MPs actually do when you've got these three different models putting pressures on MPs? You know, when they vote, are they thinking, what do I think? What does my party think? Or are they thinking, what does my constituents want? The reality is, most of the time it's not an issue, because in reality, mostly the three models line up together. So let's say I'm a Conservative MP from Watford. If I'm a Conservative MP, I'm probably going to agree with the Conservative Party. So those two are probably in the same place. If my constituency has voted for a Conservative MP, then most people in my constituency are probably more conservative and want conservative things. And therefore, these three things probably line up most of the time. So most of the time, I can be kind of like, cool, my head and my party and my constituents all want the same thing. So I'm going to vote yes or no or whatever it might be. But after that, let's say those things clash, those things don't line up. In UK politics, the party model tends to be the most dominant. We have very powerful whips in the UK. We have a system whereby we have a fusion of powers. So the government is in our legislature, which gives them so much more power. So mostly then the party model is dominant. So if I disagree with my party, I might well still vote for my party. And if my constituents don't want this thing, then I might actually vote against my constituents, because the party model is pretty dominant in UK politics. But not always, because, like it says somewhere over there, certain issues like, for example, HS2 and certain situations like Brexit can encourage more trustee or delegate behaviour. For example, there are certain MPs who don't want HS2 because their constituents have demanded it. So, for example, right now, I think it was actually Boris Johnson and others were kind of saying, well, my party is saying vote for HS2, but I'm not going to, because my constituents are very strongly against this, so I'm not going to do it. So they break the party model. There might be other situations like Brexit where, think Theresa May, what happened when she was trying to put things through Parliament. She said, I want everyone to vote for my Brexit deal. And actually many of her MPs said, I don't agree with that deal, so I am not going to do it. And so a lot of them started voting on their own, using their own kind of understanding. And there are lots of examples of this. And so whenever you hear the word rebel used in the UK Parliament, that is when an MP is breaking away from the party model and voting in a different way. It could be they're breaking away to be a delegate. It could be because they're breaking away to be more of a trustee, or a mixture, of course. The two things could kind of go together. So I hope that means you understand the implications here and the different kind of models. And we'll be talking about in class what impact this has and what you think MPs should do most of the time, and what you would do if you were an MP. Hope you found that useful. So that is the models of representation in the UK Parliament. Thanks a lot.